When we read and write data to an internal table that has a header line, we always move and read data from the header line itself. So what I mean here is when we read a record from an internal table, the record is moved to the header line of the internal table and we access the header line. When we want to write a record to an internal table, we move the contents to the header line of the internal table, and then the header line gets appended to the table itself. Let's get straight on to the ABAP code and see how we can populate our internal table. So at the moment, the code we have from our previous video is not quite suitable for this example. So I'm going to, I'll probably pause the video a little bit here, declare a brand new internal table, and then we'll have a look at the code. Okay, so I've created some new code, and you'll see it's fairly basic. I've included a table statement to declare the table we're going to be accessing, and then created a brand new internal table with almost the same structure as our Z employees table. So we have employee, surname, forename, title, date of birth, but I've then added an extra field called LOS, which stands for length of service, which will have a default value of 3, something like 3 years. So now let's take a look at how we fill this internal table. And to do this, we will use a select statement. So we start with select. And you can write all on one line here, but I'm just going to break it up so it's a little easier to see the components of the select statement. Okay. So let's break this down. We have our select statement, and the asterisk means we're going to select all fields, and then we say from, and then our table name. Then we're going to say into corresponding fields of table itab 01. So this means select all the fields from Z employees and move them into the corresponding fields that match by name of our internal table. Now this is what's called an array fetch. So it picks up the records and puts them in our table all at once. So before you've seen how we use the select statement as a loop, where it'll do one record at a time. Well, this way of using it does it all at once as an array fetch. And you'll notice there's no end select statement. So as you can see, it's super easy to move all the records from our database table into our internal table. Now, our internal table does have an extra field, length of service. So what will happen here is that every record will be filled with a value of 3. I will add one more line of code just to help with debugging. We're not really bothered about seeing the output, but it will just let us pause the code and interrogate the internal table in the debugging session. Okay. Oops, I pressed the wrong button. Do apologize. Do a check, everything's good. Pretty it up. Stick in our breakpoint. Sorry, I didn't activate. Breakpoint, and now we can test. So we're at the line of code where we're going to fill our internal table. So what we'll do is have a look at the internal table first. And we can see this hat symbol represents a header line. And then down here, you would see all the records as they get filled into the internal table. But as we have yet to process this line, there's nothing there. So I'll just step through the code, one line at a time, And all we should need to do is execute just this one line. And as you can see, I'll just come back up. We executed that. The system did an array fetch and populated all the records into our internal table. Let's change things around a little bit, and I want to introduce the append statement, just to give you an idea of another way of filling an internal table. I'll take the breakpoint off. Let's change around the select statement. And what we will do is create a select loop. And also, because I don't like typing much, I'm just going to bring in my favorite text editor. Oops. And I'm going to say move Z employees dash field name to itab 01. Okay, saving my fingers. Oops, that's not where I wanted it. Oh, of course, we don't have that field in the table, so I just remove that one. Okay, so what we're doing here is a little bit different, where instead of doing an array fetch, collecting the data one record at a time in a select loop. So the first record will be selected, and then we have individual move statements to move our data field by field to the corresponding data in our internal table. So let's activate it. I'll stick a breakpoint in, and then we can debug the code and see how it works line by line. Okay, so I'm going to step through. Let's bring up just itab 01 and we'll look at the complete table. So it's executed the select statement, and that's just held in SAP's memory at the moment. And now we're going to execute the individual moves. And as you can see, the first move moved the value of the employee field to the header record of our internal table, and so on with the other fields. Now, one important thing is, I mentioned before, when using header records, the system only works with header records. And what I mean is, it's filling the header record, but there's no code to then say, append the completed record to the table. And you'll see this as we step through. We come to the end of the select, start the loop again, and now all it's going to do is overwrite the header record. Now this is a real common mistake made by programmers, and I still make it today if I'm ever using a header record. I'll just sometimes forget to append the records to the table because everything looks right. It's just you've got this extra line of code that you need to add to say move the header record to the table and then do the loop again. So let's zoom through the code. come back and then see what we need to do to complete this. Take off the breakpoint, and it's really simple. All we need to do to get the header records appended to the table is add our append statement. So just below the moves, I will do append itab 01. This will tell the system to take the values from the header record and add them to the body of the internal table. Let's have another quick debug so you can see it working. Okay, I'll step through again, one line at a time. Let's have a look at itab first. Now we get to the append statement, and you can see a record was added to the body of the table. Now note here, the header record still contains the values. That's something to be aware of. Ideally, you want to clear out the header record as soon as you've added your record to the body of the table. Now also, if we go back and look at the individual fields of the table, and we'll take a look at the length of service field, you can see the default value of 3 has been appended. So we can zoom through the program and get back to the code.